Folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me once again. Just going to do a very quick talk video today. No cutting, no showing anything off. It has been a while since I've posted any content to the channel, and there's been a reason for that. And I did kind of step away to kind of think about things for a short while. Perhaps a bit longer than I originally intended, but hey ho. Summer, things happen. Better take these off actually. Take my glasses off, my eyes are a bit sore today. The original idea for the channel was for me to showcase some of the products that we make to potential clients. That was going to be the thing, make a product video, sort of put a link on any listing or any site that we had and do it that way. But to be honest with you, most clients aren't interested in that kind of thing, and they'd rather see a sort of 15-20 second video short on Instagram or Facebook than they ever would watch a video on YouTube. And also, while I was making the various videos I was doing, I kind of realised the channel had drifted anyway, and it was me talking about CNC operation and things that we'd learned as we'd gone along. It's kind of on the back of this that I decided took some time to ponder, and I decided to make some changes to the channel going forward. Some of you may have noticed that already with a subtle change of name, although I've not yet updated any of the thumbnails. I will get around to that at some point. Something else I did over the summer month was I made some changes to the machine itself. I needed to make some changes because of the sort of parts we were getting asked to cut a lot of the time, and I needed some alterations that would enable me to better hold that work in future. It should make the machine even more versatile going forward. Time will tell. I haven't got around yet to putting the vacuum bed back on though. That's something I do plan for the future. In terms of content, I had been filming a lot during this period. I've recorded a lot of custom parts that we've done the last few months. Unfortunately, when I'm doing the custom parts, it tends to be that I get so engrossed in getting the job done and getting the job done correct that I don't always remember to hit record at the appropriate times. So I've got a lot of videos showing pros and cons and mistakes that we made along the way, which make great videos, but they're not quite a story board as I normally try and do, the start, middle and end. So I have to upload them slightly differently and think about how I'm going to present them to make sure they make sense when they do go live. But there is some interesting stuff there, so that will be coming in the next few months. We'll start to get these uploaded and get those added to the site. So what I thought I'd do very quickly is also give you some background on me and how I got into the CNC in the first place, and a sort of backstory to how we got to where we are today as a business. And believe it or not, I do get occasional emails asking me things like this, so I think it's worth just explaining a bit of the background so folks are aware. Originally, myself and my partner had a shop in a nearby town, and the shop was doing okay, but along came some nasty weather and the town got flooded. I believe it was international news at the time, and certainly a lot of coverage nationally here in the UK, but that was back in 2009. Now, whilst operating the shop, I was also doing some occasional work in photography. It's something that I like to do whenever I get a chance. I don't do as much of it now professionally, but back then I was doing, between the shop, I was nipping out and doing the odd job here and there. I had noticed a trend growing in the United States, which was photo booth hires at weddings and parties. And it just so happened I also owned the bit of software that most of those guys were using, and to realise I was already one step there. I just needed to build a rig, if you like. The trouble was, back then there was nowhere to go and buy one, so really it was down to a case of make your own, and there was lots of variables and suggestions on the forums, good and bad. Obviously, having the shop and the problems with the floods, I decided to commission someone to make the first one, and they made that out of, I believe it was plywood. It was certainly some kind of wood. The trouble was, on taking delivery of it, even after the first coat of paint had gone on, I realised it was far too heavy, so it was never going to fly. It was okay where it was, but if I had to cart it up some of the wedding venues around here have got stairs and narrow corridors and God knows what, I figured it wasn't that practical. So I was left with no other choice but to make it myself. And I realised very quickly that it needed to be made out of lighter materials, aluminium and plastic being the two obvious options. All plastic would have been useless structurally, so I bought a load of box section and began cobbling together something myself. And as with everything, when you start making things, after a while you soon notice the mistakes and looking at how you can improve things for the future. And I also noticed there was a trend for a specific style of photo booth grown in the UK, and so I thought, how the hell can I make one of these? And that was my next foray into photo booth design. And I quickly learned how to fabricate with different types of aluminium and how to bend metal and shape metal into different shapes, etc. But not only that, I also started to analyse how it was constructed when it was on site and how to make it as simple as possible. So it kind of evolved in itself. I've got a video online of me constructing it on site to show how it goes together, because I was eventually selling those booths. I'll put a link in the description, so if you want to go and have a look, feel free. That business is now closed, but it'll give an idea of what the kind of thing we were doing back then. Needless to say, the market in photo booths moved on too, and the enclosed systems started to give way to mirror booths and to podium style, I don't know what you call them. They've got various names, but a smaller footprint photo booth, which was kind of open, didn't have an enclosure to it. They were again much lighter, much smaller. It wasn't much stretch of imagination to know that I wanted a much lighter, easy to put up booth. I started to make those, and indeed started to sell those. So literally in a few years I'd gone from having zero experience of building anything beyond wiring a plug when the time needed, to suddenly constructing these full frame metal boxes in various guises, and there was lots of accessories we made along with it. I'll put on the screen a couple of pictures of the booths as they evolved, just so you can get some idea of how we went from a fairly clunky boxy section thing to something a little bit more interesting. So originally, after designing the products, or even paying someone, I had a lot of money out for a card to get some stuff designed. The parts were sent out to a laser cutter or to a CNC punch company who made the shapes for us, which we would then form on site here. Once formed, I would do all the finishing and topping and tailing, for want of a better word. So now I was hiring booths and selling booths and accessories, so quite busy. And if that wasn't enough, there'd been a lot of talk on the forums for quite some time about how there was a lack of any forum or exposure or mechanism to go and show what all the different manufacturers across the UK were doing. There was a big expo in the USA, which was lovely, but quite expensive to go to, particularly if you wanted to haul gear over there to show it off. And as people had talked about this for some time and it never seemed to materialise or go any further, I stepped forward and started to organising a show. So before long I had the show, manufacturing the booths and doing the hire events, the three things. In 2016, first show kicked off, went really well, and we carried on expanding it from there. As you can tell, I do like to keep myself busy. Anyway, did that for 3 years to 2019. 2019 was the last one that I did, and the reason for that is quite simple. Unfortunately, I myself took ill at the tail end of 2019, and it caused me all sorts of problems at that moment for a few months. Since then, I don't think you need me to tell you that something happened around the world which caused all sorts of chaos, and there's different opinions on that. But at the end of the day, as far as my illness went and my recuperation, I needed to find a way to recover, and the way I decided to do that was to use the itch I had and the material I had lying around the workshop and the equipment, and I came and started making things. I made all sorts of silly little things, and I'd put them up on eBay and I'd see how they sold, and some of them sold really well, some of them didn't. Some of them were absolutely atrocious, in markets that I knew nothing about, but it didn't matter. It was getting my ticker working, my brain working rather, and that's what I wanted to do. A few months into 2020, I was making a lot of workshop storage items, some of which again were selling extremely well, but I was developing the portfolio, the catalogue, and I was throwing in other items which happened to be related to hygiene by coincidence. It wasn't deliberate, purely coincidental, and naturally they just skyrocketed. So I suddenly found ourselves in a position where we were getting asked to make lots of different things related to what was going on in the world, and we were finding ways to come up with solutions for those. So everything was cut originally by hand. I would have blanks made up by a metal supplier to a specific size for a specific product, and I'd order all these different sizes in, and when they got here I would then use templates and jigs to cut and shape them into the dimensions and shape that we needed before forming them upon the forming machine. And again, there is a video of me showing that somewhere in the channel. I'll try and put a link to that one. It looks much slower on the video than it was in real life. I was deliberately going slowly and explaining each part on the video because I was explaining this to someone who was asking for help as to what direction I needed machine wise to really help. So it's a bit laborious in there. It wasn't that bad in real life because when you're batching them you can do them quite quickly and it didn't take long, but when you do that, especially doing something by hand, there's that human element of slight creep. You know, you put a part into a jig, you can just move just a fraction of a millimetre and that's the whole thing out. You wouldn't necessarily see it until you come to start adding the other parts to it, you know, when you've got to bolt things to it and things like that. So it was, you know, hit and miss to some extent. Anyway, clearly further down the road it was obvious we were going to need some kind of automation to assist. We had the options of plasma cutter, we had the options of laser, wasn't really an option at that point, water jet, that was really expensive, or a CNC router or a CNC vertical mill. Those were the designs or ideas I was kicking around, and I did probably procrastinate longer than I really should have because I was undecided on the plasma, the CNC router or the vertical mill, and each had different pros and cons depending what I was making, and it was a case of deciding what direction was the business going in, and did I want to step back into the photo booth world, which would need the vertical mill, or did I want to carry on now in more the sheet metal work and the expanded portfolio we had. Well, it's fair to say the expanded portfolio won out, and I preferred being more creative that way because I can literally branch off into any direction I want. And to be honest with you, the photo booth world was getting a bit flooded. There was new ideas coming in as well, and I just decided that, you know, I'd been out of it for quite some months anyway. It wasn't going to come back for quite some time either because of what was happening around the world, so I decided that the CNC router was going to end up being the best option, and that was indeed the direction we went. And as you can imagine, now I had the other problem of most CNC router videos, most CNC router content, even forums, wherever you go, it's nearly all related to cutting woodwork stuff or cutting small parts out of small blocks of aluminium. None of which applied to what I was doing. I was trying to cut parts out of large sheet. But I was lucky enough at the time to bump into a guy who was a former rep for a big CNC company who'd set up his own company selling bits and pieces and doing consultancy, and he kind of was very generous with his time and gave me some tips and pointers and showed me how it was quite easy with the right tools and the right bits. And to be honest with you, I've never looked back since. It's been a wonderful tool and it's done everything I've needed to do on the sheet metal side. And yes, I make mistakes daily, even to this day. Sometimes I will do something mostly totally stupid and human, like I'll set something up on the machine, I'll walk away to respond to a message or do something else that's distracted me, I'll turn around and I maybe have forgotten to tighten the bit up, or something, you know, totally ludicrous like that. It does happen, but by and large, most of the time, we're just cutting chunks out every day and then forming the parts up. So there you go. It was quite a meandering story. It was from flood to fabrication, for want of a better description. It was nothing planned. It just happened. It evolved each time. You know, the progress happened. Not a trained CNC operator. I think that's fairly evident even in the videos I do create. But the one thing that we do, because we're doing this stuff day in day out, and because we're working with material that isn't as commonly used as many of the other sites, the other channels do use, we've got some interesting information to pass on, or at least I think we have. And I certainly think, you know, whilst we're talking about it in the metalwork, it could just as easily apply to the woodwork or other products. So anyway, there you go. That is the potted history of how I got to where I was. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope I haven't waffled on too long. I do have a habit of waffling. I hope you join me again in the near future as we start to upload more of the content, and we start now planning videos for the future as well. And hopefully you find it that as interesting as you have the previous ones. Thank you to all those who have subscribed so far, and I hope the changes I'm making doesn't put you off remaining as subscribers. I've been Mostly John. Thank you for watching. We'll take care. We'll see you again soon. Bye bye. I mean, I had jigs and templates set up to, you know, make the repeatability. I had jigs and templates set up to make the repeatability